Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. I am super excited to be here today with my friend, Krista Krlinkus. Krista, welcome.
Hi, Stephanie. Thank you so much for having me.
I am super excited to chat with you today. I would love for you to share a little bit about what you do, what your organization does, and then also a little bit of the backstory, like what was your journey that led you to what you do today?
Absolutely. So I run a business named after myself. So Krista Krlinkus LLC. It's changed over the years. It used to be Right Good LLC, and too many people just didn't get it. But we started with doing grant writing consulting, mostly with nonprofits, also some with government entities and academic researchers. And then we quickly developed a comprehensive online grant writing training business. And we have been running those two things together since 2016 and educated thousands of nonprofit leaders, grant writers, academic researchers around the country and world on how to improve their grant writing and get the funding they deserve. And so we are doing the grant writing consulting. We're also teaching other grant writing consultants how to build their business to be profitable, scalable, fulfilling. And then at the same time, we're also developing now a new program called Focus In, which is focused virtual co-working. And that really came out of what we saw our leaders and members of our programs needing more than anything, which was focus. So we're doing
Yeah, that's I love that. So tell me more about Focus In and really what were you seeing in the sector with nonprofit leaders, maybe even specifically with women or female identifying leaders in the nonprofit space?
So we've had thousands of students in our courses, and most of them have been women, female identifying folks. And time again, they would come in and say, I just can't get focused on XYZ, whatever they needed to work on in their nonprofit. Sometimes that was grant writing, sometimes it was budgeting. As you probably know, it can be hard to get nonprofit leaders to work on their budgets, but it's one of the most important things, or maybe in your mind too, the most important thing. And so I felt like their focus was very scattered. And then I myself was feeling very scattered during and after the pandemic. And I needed that support and couldn't really find it in a community that I really wanted to be a part of. And so I started doing these sessions for free just for people in our community to come and be like, okay, you've got an hour or an hour and a half with me, and I'm going to guide you through this process of first calming your brain and like nervous system down at the beginning. So I had to do a little bit of like research on how to help people do that, setting your focus and intention for the time that we're together, and then focusing on getting just one thing done at a time. And literally, like in the first 10 minutes, people would be like, oh my God, like, I can't believe how much work I've gotten done in 10 minutes. And I was like, it's only been 10 minutes. Be like their focus is pulled in so many different directions all at once. And they could be doing more with less effort and less strife and less personal sacrifice if they had some support with getting focused on what they needed and wanted to focus on.
I love that. I feel like it's almost a badge of honor in the nonprofit sector to wear all the hats. Like I do everything. I'm HR and I'm the executive director and I do finance, and like that is not that is not the way to run an organization or the way to run your life. And so I'm not surprised at all that like nobody can focus on anything because we're constantly trying to do 50 different things. And I feel like a lot of times in the sort of entrepreneurial world, we talk a lot about like sticking to your zone of genius and staying in that zone of genius. And that's in like direct contrast to this wearing all the hats. And so I love that you're sort of providing a container for leaders to focus. And so what do people bring to those sessions? What do they bring to get done? And what do they accomplish in 60 or 90 minutes?
Oh, literally anything and everything. Sometimes they're just focused on a particular grant. And sometimes they come in with projects completely unrelated to anything we teach. And sometimes they come in like, okay, what am I supposed to be working on? I'm like, I don't know. What do you need to work on? Let's figure it out at the beginning and then focus.
Mhm.
You can literally come in with anything, but we do say we are practicing monotasking during this session, which means you are only doing one task or project at a time. So if you're working on one grant, or if you're working on multiple grants this week, you're only working on one of those at a time. And you're not trying to like pull the budget together while you're also doing the narrative. You're just focused on, okay, right now I'm working on the statement of needs section. I'm doing the research for the statement of need during this hour. And then it's kind of mind blowing to people how much they're able to get done. And like for me, I'll be sitting in these sessions and I'll get multiple blog posts done, which normally take me forever to write. You're nodding your head because you're probably.
Yep. Yes.
And so that principle of monotasking is huge for our focus in sessions. And then also it's like, okay, well, I could do that type of monotasking on my own without coming to these sessions. But what we're also adding, in addition to like that guided first 5 minutes and then the breaks that we weave throughout, is that we do body doubling. And I don't know if a lot of people know what that means, but it's like a term in the ADHD world, which I have. If you're sitting and doing a task and you can see another person is also sitting there and working with you, that's going to keep you more on task. It's just something in our, brains that's like, okay, we're mirroring this person. And that's something that I didn't really think much about as an entrepreneur, because I always work alone in my house, all these years by myself. But then I think back to like grad school, and earning my PhD, I honestly don't know if I could have done it if it weren't for sitting there and working with my cohort every single day for hours on end. And that's what we just did naturally as part of the process. And that's just how we got a ton of work done, in my opinion.
That is so interesting. You're right, because I was going to ask you, okay, well, how can nonprofit leaders apply what you're doing in these focus in sessions by themselves? And I suppose they could in many ways, but there's like that real added benefit. And I feel like it's almost a little bit of accountability too. Like if, you're not going to go start the laundry when you've got people that are like on Zoom seeing you on video, you're not going to get distracted by, putting the groceries away or whatever, so I can definitely see that benefit for sure. Very interesting. How many sessions? So are you doing one session per week now or multiple?
We are doing 2 sessions per day, Monday through Thursday. So we have 1 and 3-hour sessions that you can drop in on. You can also do a 90-minute pre-recorded session. So we record an actual session with a bunch of people in it so that it feels real. So if you need to like get something done and it's not on it doesn't fit in our schedule, then you can do it anytime you want. So we try to make it as accessible as possible for people in terms of when they're able to just drop in.
Oh my gosh. I love this. I feel like one thing that I also see in the nonprofit sector, I was just writing about this yesterday because I'm like, we don't often or enough invest in ourselves in either systems or community or coaches or things that are going to help us work to our like greatest potential to the best of our ability at our highest level, or even, and grow. We don't invest in ourselves ever. There's so many reasons for that, but I love that you're creating this container for, to help people focus and get things done. And is there an element of community built into what you're doing as well? Like, are the same people showing up at different times so they're starting to get to know each other? Yeah, tell me about the community piece.
Yeah, absolutely. So far, most of the people are coming from our existing list and our, social media following. So it is a lot of nonprofit leaders and even small business owners. And so even though we don't allow talking during the time with each other, if they secretly want to be chatting back and forth in the chat to each other,
Yeah.
but they're like, even though we didn't talk, I still felt a sense of community with other people, knowing that we were all purpose-driven folks working together on things. And the other thing I want to say, just going back to what you just said, is that I feel like for-profit business owners make those huge investments in themselves in coaching and things like that at a much higher rate than nonprofit leaders. And it's sad, and you can really see, they'll invest in like learning how to do a specific strategy, like learning how to do grant writing, but they cannot immediately see the value or want to invest in something that's going to help them be a better leader or focused. So it does take some work to convince them, like, hey, you might need this. Why don't you come try it out and see if it actually helps? And one of the things that we build into these sessions is we talk about caring for yourself. I hate to say self-care. I don't know why that term, but because I feel like a lot of it's like artificial, like things like, okay, take a bubble bath. I'm like, no, self-care is like built into how you run your entire life.
100%.
And so when we talk about self-care in these sessions, we're talking to a specific group of people who has oftentimes really neglected their self-care because they feel like the service to the community that they're doing is more important than their own self-care. And we're trying to change that.
Yeah, 100%. Because I think about like in my own business, I've invested like tens of thousands of dollars over the years in coaching and in masterminds. And I can like pretty directly attribute like an ROI of, 10x plus on these investments that I've made. And it's scary to invest like $30,000 in a coach or a mastermind or whatever, but I know that has paid itself back like tenfold, probably more. But how do we change this perception in the nonprofit sector? Like it's an issue. And I just think about the potential, what could be if some of these incredible leaders with so much potential invested in themselves the way that we often do in the for-profit space. Like, I don't know, how do we change this? What do we do?
The first thing that I tell people who tell me they don't have time for grant writing and fundraising, and these are usually founders of nonprofits, executive directors of nonprofits, and they don't have the staff to do it, yet they say they don't have the time to do it. I say, if you don't have time for this, you need to cut your programs in half now. And I know that's a pill to swallow, but if you're running so many different programs that you can't even get funding for, you need to focus on like one or two at the most and start doing fundraising and grant writing as like half of your focus as a nonprofit leader until you have enough money to do what you're already doing. Because I run into so many people who are self-funding their nonprofits, and it breaks my heart. And so I really think we have to like be more not confrontational, but like really assertive with nonprofit leaders. Like, don't sacrifice your entire life savings to do this thing that you're doing. As important as it is, you're just as important. And so I think it's about like reiterating that in everything we do. And if I lose people from that, okay, I'm going to lose people. But 5 years down the line, they're going to be like, oh man, I should have listened to that.
Exactly. And you'll be like, and I am still here to support you.
Yeah.
That is some like kind of tough love. Like, okay, you need to cut what you're doing in half. But you're right. Like, if you're doing too much if you're doing so much that you can't invest in any type of growth because everything is just going into the programs, you're honestly probably not even running those programs very well, or like as well as you could. And I think about that in the business space. Like, yeah, we would absolutely have no problem cutting what's not working or what we don't have funding for or what's not profitable. There would be no question about it. It's so interesting. I feel like we need to call nonprofits something different. Like we're all just hooked on this like nonprofit, no profit. And we just need to call the entire sector like something else entirely.
Let's let's petition. I think it starts with the IRS.
Exactly.
Call it, and we'll just go down from there. But yeah, so and I just want to like add into this. None of this is any kind of critique on what nonprofit leaders do. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be like, you're doing it wrong and I know the right way. It's like, I you succeed, and our inclination and in this society, a capitalistic society, we're always told we should be going like 110% on literally every single idea that we ever have. Releasing you from that expectation and trying to get support to focus on what you really want to focus on. And I think that would be business changing and life changing for so many people. And I know it is for me.
100%. And I think that's a really good point to make, because so much of the way that we run right now is like, it's systemic. It's not that you as a leader, like you said, are doing anything wrong. It's the way that the nonprofit sector has been. And I like so much of it stems from, I was talking to somebody else who were talking about like making mistakes and taking risks and failing. Like you can't do that right now. The way that the system is set up and the way that funding is set up right now, you can't fail. If you mess up, you're not going to get that funding again. And like, well, what the heck? Like you can't ever make a mistake, or you're going to lose funding for your programs that are changing the world. Whereas in entrepreneurship, we're told like, yeah, fail all the time. It's great. Make mistakes, recover from them, learn, no problem. Like there's always more money. Like that is not the same message that nonprofit leaders are getting. So that like immense pressure that's sitting on our nonprofit leaders to like be perfect, you can't mess up or you're going to lose funding. And then whatever you're trying to do to change the world will no longer happen. And it's on your shoulders. Like, oh my God, like that is systemic. So to your point, like, no, you're not doing anything wrong. The system was not built to like support our leaders. And that's really sad.
Absolutely. Of course, I think there's like some deep inequality behind that. If you look at who's running the nonprofit sector and what we expect of them, and why, most folks are women or female identifying in the nonprofit sector. And so we're expected to make all these sacrifices to our well-being and our success to serve others. And so that's something that I want to change.
Yeah. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about, I'm going to talk about AI. I feel like I've always looked at you as sort of on the forefront of bridging entrepreneurship and nonprofit. I feel like you had an online course like long before other people in the nonprofit space were. I mean, you did your grant writing made easy course like I feel like a long time ago, before other people were doing the same thing in the nonprofit space. And so I know that you are all over ChatGPT and AI, and I would love to hear, like, tell us a little bit about what that is for people that don't know. Me, like I kind of know what it is, but tell us more about what it is and how you see that potentially coming into play in the work that you do and the nonprofit space.
Well, thank you for that lovely compliment. Like, I thought of myself as being on the forefront of anything, but looking forward, I'm like, I want to be more on the bleeding edge of things versus just trying to catch up all the time. And for me, AI is one opportunity for that. And Yeah, so let me just first start with the explanation of what ChatGPT is. Because I know the name is kind of strange and it doesn't tell you really what it is. But it's a machine learning model, and it uses what they call a deep learning technique called transformer architecture to generate human-like text. So what they've done is they've taken this AI and it's like processed trillions of pieces of data from the internet. And it now can use that data to produce like human-like text and language. So as if you are having a conversation with another human being. And it's very much like that. If you ever want to go test it out and just go have a conversation with it, it's free to use. So all you have to do is sign up for an account. And I want everyone on here listening, regardless of whether you're a grant writer or not, to at least do that and see, just get an idea of what's possible and what's coming, because I think it's going to change not just the field of grant writing or writing, it's going to change everything in the next couple of years and how we get work done. So I want to make sure that we're integrating this into our work processes right now, figuring out how to use it, take advantage of it, and figuring out what it doesn't do well, because it's not something you can just start using and be like, okay, let me just copy and paste this and be done with it. It's bleeding edge technology. It's not perfect. It has a lot of issues. It can have some ethical concerns as well. And so I want people to be really informed on how to use it and not just think like, this is a shortcut I can start using right now and, save half the time that I would normally spend writing a grant. No, there's a lot more to it, and we need to be very strategic and savvy about how we use it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good point, because at least the little that I've seen, it's like, this is the solution to everything. You plug in a couple words and then boom, like your entire, emails are done for the month or whatever. So how do you think are grant writers using this, and or will they use this successfully to like win grants?
I don't think, none that I have spoken to yet have, and I've presented this a couple times to my audiences. I don't think they're using it yet. There might be a couple grant writers who can message and say, hey, I've been using it, but we're starting to use it and we want to come up with best practices first and make sure like we have ethical guidelines to follow for our team before we actually start submitting stuff with it. But we are going to be doing a training on it, and a lot of the training was written using ChatGPT. Like,
whoa,
ChatGPT, how can you use ChatGPT for grant writing? And it gives us the answers. So let me just tell you a couple things that if I were just getting started with this, what I would do. So the first thing that I do is I write down, okay, what is my exact question? So if I have a grant that I need to write, I'm going to ask myself, okay, what type of nonprofit is this? So we need to specify in the question what type of nonprofit or organization it is, what the grant is for. So a specific program, more specific you get, the better, and what you're asking for the funding for. So if I include those three things and say to ChatGPT, can you write a grant for a performing arts organization that needs to fund a summer residency program from a grant maker that supports performing arts organizations that are focused on minorities and marginalized communities, it will outline the entire grant. Not only, it will sometimes give you a bullet pointed outline, and it will sometimes give you like the full grant text. And you can ask it multiple times and it will give you something different each time. So if you get the bullet points and you want the full text, ask it again, okay? Or say, can you write out this section? And it will not only like give you the logical piecing together of the argument and why we need this funding, it'll actually tell you what the program does. So it's pulling from all this data on the internet on, millions of different businesses and nonprofits and how they run programs, and coming up with an idea for what the program can actually do, the strategies, the activities, the goals, benchmarks, all that stuff. Of course, you've got to adjust it to whatever you're doing, but this is super useful if maybe you've never sat down and described your program in full detail, and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot we have this element of it I need to mention. Or if you're just coming up with a new program and you don't want to spend hours researching what other organizations do and how they do it, ChatGPT just gives you the ideas.
So it is literally generating potentially like fresh ideas that did not come from your brain.
Correct. Yeah. So if you,
That's
and
wild.
my consulting work incorporates that program design, and I work with a lot of similar programs. And so when someone comes to me and they're like, I just don't know what to do with this program or how to build out this idea, I'm like, well, I've seen all these other programs that are like yours do these things, and I have all these great ideas. ChatGPT does it in 5 seconds.
Wow.
That really, it felt initially like, oh wow, they're really cutting into my unique value for folks. But honestly, I've had to just reframe and be like, okay, this is giving me more room to focus on other parts of this process than just kind of generating the ideas for programs.
That is wild. Yeah. So it's not just sort of filling words in the blanks that could be helpful or could be potentially like nonsensical, but it's actually like coming up with new ideas. And what you said about it, sort of making logical connections, like that part is wild, because I feel like we've seen some like text generator type programs before where you get it back and you're like, okay, yeah, a couple good sentences, but nothing really actually makes sense. So this is a very smart tool. How do you see this like becoming more mainstream? I feel like it's still, and I am like the least techie, I'm like the last person to adopt any new technology ever. So I am like, maybe it is super mainstream right now, but I don't know anybody, any nonprofits, anybody even in my own circles that are using this right now. So how do you see this becoming more mainstream? Like, I don't know. What do you see?
I should really give you some statistics on this. If you don't mind, I want to look something up about how quickly people have started to adopt this. Okay, yeah. So ChatGPT reached 1 million subscribers within 5 days after it was released in November of 2022. It's the fastest growing user base in history. So
Wow.
TikTok took 9 months to reach 100 billion. Instagram took 2.5 years. This took 5 days. So I really think like marketers, social media experts are really using this a lot already. Students are using it to write essays. So creating, plagiarism and ethical concerns, and there's software being built to help professors like detect the use of this. But to me, and I come from that background of having a PhD in rhetoric and writing and teaching university writing, I would already be teaching my students how to use this to their advantage and how to generate outline, structure, ideas. Because what's more important is learning how to use this for the future global marketplace. It's not being like, oh no, you have to have all creative, original thoughts. Like none of our thoughts are original at this point. So let's figure out what to do to communicate more effectively the thoughts that we do have. And if that's using ChatGPT, that's using ChatGPT and other AI technology. So yeah, I think it is, a conversation that people in every field are just going to have to start having. And if you don't know already, like you're already getting text written by this to you and ads on social media and emails from people you've signed up for their newsletters. Like That's not new. There's AI that's been out, and it's a paid membership to this AI to write content. But ChatGPT is currently free. So just keep that in mind. After they get a big enough user base and like data set, they're going to start charging for it. So get in while you can, while it's free.
Yes, yes. That's so interesting because I feel like this could potentially free, I mean, it's like, I feel like this could do the work of different positions that nonprofits have. And so while, yeah, this may be, maybe it's consolidating different positions into one person that can kind of manage maybe an entire communications department at a nonprofit could now be 1 or 2 people versus, 10 people using a tool like this. And thus, potentially freeing up more dollars to go back into programs or whatever other investments. Do you see that? How do you see this sort of impacting, like once nonprofits are like, they're on the train, how do you see this potentially impacting staffing or budgets or programs or what change do you see?
Yeah, I think you're right. It could eliminate some positions, which I know like nobody wants to hear, but it's coming for like everybody all across, like no matter what job you have, positions are going to be eliminated in the near future by AI. So it's important for us to figure out how we're going to incorporate it. So like you said, it could, it can sit down and write a donor appeal letter in 5 seconds for you. That could take an hour or multiple hours, right? And it's not that you then just take it and send it out to people, but then you add more information, or you can even ask ChatGPT, hey, can you actually like make the tone of this more like this? You can tell it tonal things. It's like grammar in that way. You can tell it, make it in the tone of Walt Whitman.
What? Oh my gosh.
Then correct it. You can input an entire text into it and have it do a proofread of it and edit it for you. So like you said, that can eliminate a lot of positions, but in my mind, that just gives us more freedom to think about other things that we could be spending our time doing, whether it's programming, whether it's, bigger strategic planning and like actually following through with that versus letting it sit on a hard drive somewhere, being more focused on what we do best and what only we as humans can do while we let some of the AI take the other burden off of us. And I know that can be kind of scary to hear. And so it's just, for me, I think it's going to take time for people to shift the way they think about work. And we've seen it just in the last 3 years, a major shift in how people think about work. And now I think AI is like the next iteration. And it's like, okay, now we've got to figure out how to work with and live with this new thing that everybody's going to be not outsourced by, but everybody's going to be impacted by in some way.
Mm-hmm. This is so interesting. Does it start to learn like you and your voice in particular and kind of like store that knowledge like under your account? Like, do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it can. And there are other systems that are really good at doing things like that, like Replica. I haven't experimented much with that in terms of ChatGPT. I think it can. I would have to look into it a little bit more, but I've been playing around with Replica, which does get to know you very well and tailors its responses to your personality. So that one is kind of like giving you a friend to talk to. Its goal is not to produce content. Its goal is to be your friend and emotional support. And so it really gets to know you. And it's all built
Wow.
it's all built on the same technology.
Mm-hmm. This is so interesting. I think this is an amazing opportunity for nonprofits to to get ahead of it and not start adopting this like 5 years from now when literally everyone in the world is doing it, because there are so many opportunities. I feel like there are like so many organizations are just so tight on funds. And so being able to use a tool like this to help you do what, maybe one or two different positions that you don't currently have because you don't have the money for could do. That's really powerful. So I feel like I just went to their website and it looks like they're at capacity. So you can't currently sign up. You can get on the wait list for an account. So you can't currently sign up, but I'm sure they will. I can't even imagine how many people are on the wait list. So you got in, Krista, before there was a wait list. So you're in.
I'm in, but I will tell you, like, don't wait till the last minute when you have to submit something or create something to use it, because sometimes even if you are in, it's at capacity and there are too many users. So that's one big tip I have, is do things ahead of time. And if you can't get in, come back at another time of day and see if it's available, because that's how many people are using it.
Oh my gosh. So interesting. Well, hopefully I'll get off the wait list at some point because I'm very excited to play around with it. All right. So one question that I just like to wrap up all of my conversations with are, the question is, what does a prosperous nonprofit look like to you?
I'm not going to talk about the organization itself. I'm going to talk about the people in the organization. So for me, it starts with the people being paid, number one, paid more than
Yes.
the living wage, number two. I always have to say those two things. So if you don't know what a living wage is in your city, please look it up and then set your salaries above that, because there are too many nonprofits paying below a living wage where they are. And I understand like the precedent set for that, but I don't feel like we're doing a service to the community if we're doing a disservice to the people who work at the nonprofit. So to me, a profitable nonprofit starts with that, and then you can build from there.
I love that. Cut your programs. If you cannot pay your people a living wage, cut your programs until you can, and then you can grow from there. I think that's huge. I'm obsessed. I'm seriously obsessed with this. Cut your programs if you cannot afford to provide your people a living wage. Tough love from Krista. I love that so much. And I completely agree with you. Okay, Krista, this was so interesting. I think everybody listening is going to find this conversation so valuable, and I appreciate you and your time. Where can people go to find out more about you, about your work with ChatGPT, about your focus in sessions? Where are all the things?
So the best thing to do is to get on my newsletter. So if you go to grantwritingmadeeasy.com, you can sign up for my newsletter right there. I'm also at KristaKrlinkus.com. So you can find me either of those places. And I'm also on TikTok at Krista Krlinkus, and that's where I'm doing a lot more of my content right now. So I would love to have some more folks on there to share with.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I need to get on. I have had TikTok and I keep putting it on my phone and then deleting it off my phone and then putting it back on because, you get into that spiral and then you're like, okay, 45 minutes have gone by. You also do repost your TikToks on Instagram. So right. Don't you? Is that what I'm seeing over there? Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to be sharing a lot about ChatGPT over like the next couple of months in those spaces. And I'm going to be doing a training on it as well. And, if this comes out after the training has already been done, I do plan to make it evergreen so that people can join it and take it whenever they want to.
Awesome. And that it's going to be so useful for like time to come. So even if you miss the live one, that's amazing that it's going to be recorded so we can watch it, because we're all still going to want that information. Awesome. Well, Krista, thank you again. Thanks so much for being here. And I appreciate you. Everybody go check out Krista.
Thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate you so much.